would the tongue, here comes another question. I love that. Would the tongue roll make the exercise an AC versus DC exercise?
Yeah, so I literally was having this exact thought. I don't know, and I'm gonna have to go and research this and get back
Yeah.
to you on that.
And,
I
and then
Yeah.
that figures into that whole concept a little bit. I think it does. There's a shift in the air pressure because also when you're using distortions in singing, it is
Mm,
changing that. It's changing the vibratory pattern
mm,
and the resonance, but not so much. Ideally, not so much with the vocal folds, but the
yes.
internal air it's moving around differently.
Yeah, this is what I was, because obviously the change is happening behind the straw, which I think is going to significantly lower the effect it might have. I think there will be an effect, but nowhere near as much as the effect happening in front of the straw, because the effect happening in front of the straw will change the resistance high and low based on the resistance of the straw that you're using. If it's happening behind the straw, you're not changing resistance based on the straw, you're changing resistance based on whatever the vocal tract is. So yeah, I want to go and do some more research on this because I think that is
Yeah,
a really
cool.
cool idea.
Cool. I do have one question. This question I just want to ask myself. If you have, because I notice this with singers, and I pay attention to it when I'm using a straw, but they're often when someone is phonating, vocalizing through a straw, the airflow on the other side somehow they change the I guess the subglottic pressure, and it sometimes it will fluctuate heavily where they'll actually stop the airflow. That happens then often at this in the exact same way in certain parts of their singing where you get this there's this hold back. So do we want to have, while we're phonating through a straw, a very regular air output the entire
Yeah.
time? And how do
We
we do that as we go up higher where the
yeah.
pressure relationships change?
Yes, we do want to have consistent airflow, and the best way to do this is by using water, because the water becomes a biovisual feedback mechanism. If you see bubbles, there is airflow. If you see no bubbles, there is no airflow. If the bubbles are erupting everywhere and spilling over, too much airflow, too much pressure. So they become a very good instantaneous mechanism for you to go, okay, lots of bubble. Okay, good. I can see consistent bubble. Now, if you're changing pitch, if you're going and they start splashing everywhere, we're putting too much pressure in. If you change pitch and they stop, we're not putting enough pressure and there's not enough airflow. So it becomes this system of I can see exactly what's happening and I can recalibrate as I am doing the exercise to make sure the bubbles are consistent. There is also the aspect of consistent bubbles at, let's say, middle C is going to be different to the consistency of bubbles required for the octave above, because the pitch has changed. We need slightly different requirements. So the thing to look out for is, as long as there is airflow, so as long as there are bubbles, and as long as those bubbles aren't erupting and spilling over, this is okay. So that, yeah, I think it's one of the best ways to do it. I mean, you can do it with like a piece of paper. If you have like a piece of paper, this isn't actually a very good example of a here. So if you're doing it with a piece of paper, you can blow onto the corner and you can see the corner move. Now, if that corner has a very good kind of consistent movement, great. If the corner goes and this goes whoa on those high pitches, again, probably too much pressure. So I think water's better. It's a far easier mechanism to get acclimatized to. But if you don't have any water, a little bit of piece of paper will also help.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Thanks for that. That's also what I encourage. Also, for other SOVT exercises, just as a bit of wisdom, and I do teach this is one of the important monitoring factors, self-monitoring factors of using SOVT correctly, is that the noise of the occlusion that's what you monitor. And that's how you keep your airflow rate steady. So let's just use the one you demonstrated, the F that becomes the V. So the F, that sound should always be there and constant.
Yep.
If that sound fluctuates, then you are changing your airflow rate. Anytime the airflow rate changes, the internal pressures change, the vocal folds have to adjust, and you're having a bunch of dancing going on, for your sound, rather than just riding that wave of air like a surfer or a glider. It's much easier for the vocal folds to operate in a steady airflow, steady pressure relationship. Granted, those are always changing depending on pitch and other factors, but we can still maintain an even, steady airflow rate throughout those changes. So great question.